Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here with my review for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. As the title says, there will be spoilers in the second half of this review. Also, because I'm sure somebody's going to ask, I got this off of eBay. It is the Loot Crate Doctor Strange cloak, I guess. I did have it from Loot Crate, and sadly I left it at my ex's, and that was just very tragic, and it was definitely lost in the sands of time on that one. So I had to go on eBay, and I found it again. Thank goodness, because I really do like this. It's ridiculous, but I love it. So definitely look it up if you're interested. It is the Loot Crate Doctor Strange jacket, or robe, really. And hopefully you'll be able to find it if you really want it. Also, obviously, Sam Raimi directed this, and I also don't have a Doctor Strange shirt, so that's why I went with the jacket, but gotta have some Evil Dead. So, getting into it, most of this review is going to be spoilers, because I feel like there's so much in this to talk about, where it's just like, I can't really talk about this thing, I can't really talk about that thing, because it's so spoilery that there's so much, like, whether it's cameos or actual reveals, stuff that they do as far as like some of the villain stuff, some of the stuff as far as going through the dimensions. There's so much that is just like, man, that's actually, when you really like break it all down, it's like, well, that's a big deal. I wouldn't want to, I wouldn't want to know this thing, I wouldn't want to know that thing. I was fortunate enough, I barely got spoiled by like the TV spot, so I knew like one thing that I wanted to say, and it was technically talked about in the poster, so it was still a big question up in the air, like, is this person, are they going to actually show up? So I was kind of spoiled by that on the TV spot, which really was only because of YouTube, like the classic thing where it's almost impossible to avoid spoilers, even just from TV spots. But after like the first trailer, honestly, I didn't watch anything for Doctor Strange. I was like, I don't want to know who is actually good, who's actually bad, what this character's motivations are, whether it's an alternate universe version or maybe a character we already know and maybe they've kind of leveled up in skill, all these different things. I'm like, I don't really want to know who's from what universe in this movie. I kind of just want to see what happens. So I did as much as I could to possibly avoid everything about this movie, because there were so many. It was a lot like Spider-Man, where it was like, this leak is saying this and this is saying that, and I'm like, I don't want to ruin the surprises of this movie, because just like with Spider-Man, there are some pretty big shocks in this movie, and I'm like, I'm glad I didn't know 100% that this was a thing, or some of the stuff I didn't even hear rumors about, like, I'll talk about it in spoilers, because just in case, I don't want to ruin it for anybody. But I enjoyed the movie. I thought it was pretty fun. I like the action. I like the visuals. I feel like this is one of those movies where I'm like, I think I'll enjoy it a second time more, because I enjoyed it, but it was definitely one of those things where I was like, oh, okay, like I had fun with it and stuff, and there, I had like my minor issues here and there, and then it's like, I feel like if I did see it a second time though, I might enjoy it a lot more, because the first movie, I would say, was much more succinct as far as the story. It was, and that's kind of a classic. Like, it's either, whether it's time travel or dimension hopping, the stories are always insane, and it tends to be difficult to kind of just rein them in and make them feel like, okay, this is this thing. This movie, I feel, suffered from that a little bit, but not to the point that the movie's bad. It was just to the point that it was like, you could kind of feel it. It was like, oh, they either talked about stuff that isn't really a big part of it, and is like, well, I feel like you spent a little too much time on that thing for it to not even really matter that much, or that time probably could have been used to do something else as far as like, more impactful elements of the story, and kind of flesh some of those elements out, compared to just being like, here's a thing that'll matter, maybe it'll matter later, but as of now, or at least in this very film, it's just like a thing that they reference that is kind of a kicking off point for something else, and it's like, oh, they talk about it quite a bit for it to not really mean much, and it's kind of either just resolved, or it's just not a thing that's meant to be kind of dealt with in this film, which happens a lot in some of the movies where they'll reference this or that. But it definitely felt like there were elements of this story that got a really deep focus, and it wasn't important enough to spend that much time. Like, it was important enough to reference it, but it was like they probably could have cut the reference down to half the time that they spent on some of this stuff, and I feel like it could have been used, the time could have been used better, because it was like, well, this is relevant to this character, but it's not really relevant to this story that much. So I feel like there were some elements here and there that could have worked a little bit better had they either shortened them out, something shortened to kind of use that extra time to open up more things. But all in all, I still really enjoyed the film, and I do think a second viewing might make me enjoy it a little bit more, because I'll know what to expect from the story, and you won't really be thrown off as much from some of the elements where it's like, oh, that feels like that should have been a little longer, or this could have been shorter to make this longer, to expand on this thing and give me less of that thing. And I felt like I got that a little bit, kind of going throughout some of the story elements of the movie. But I still definitely enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun to go through, and I'm excited to see kind of what they do next, because there's a post-credit scene. There's a mid-credit and a post-credit scene, of course. And it's interesting. Like the mid-credit scene for sure is just like, oh, okay, this is just like, this is a thing is happening now. So I'm excited for that, especially depending on what they could or could not do. There's, once again, there's some references, and it's like, who knows? I mean, it took us forever just to get Doctor Strange 2, so you never really know. Because there's references in here where it's like, oh, okay, this thing is like, that's a thing in the comics. And then this other thing that is like slightly referenced is an even bigger thing in the comics. So who knows? Who knows how long it'll take? Who knows what they'll actually do? But I'm excited to see where we go in the future of the MCU. And Doctor Strange, I think at this point, has to play a much bigger part, because he's played his moments throughout the films, but it's been a long time since that first Doctor Strange movie. It's crazy to think. Like, I'm pretty sure he's had the longest distance between two actual films, not counting the Incredible Hulk, of course, because that's weird universal legal issues. They can't even make a movie about the Hulk by himself, which I feel like they would have done by now, because it's the Hulk. They really should have. But they could have done Doctor Strange a long time ago, and they just didn't have that plan for it. So it's been a long time for him. So we'll see what happens going into whatever he does next, if it's like his third movie, which, once again, probably won't be for a very long time. But we'll see what happens. All in all, though, I definitely enjoyed the film, and I would recommend checking it out. Of course, if you're even remotely excited, you should probably see it as soon as you possibly can. A lot like Spider-Man, this is one of those movies where it's like, you should see it. You should see it now, because you will be spoiled, and you'll be like, man, I wish I got surprised by that, because the reveals are like crazy in this one. It's so good too. Which leads into spoilers. So if you have not seen the movie, do not watch this. Unless you don't care, of course. But getting right into spoilers, we're going to just go with the villain. It's Wanda, the whole time. That's something that I didn't want to talk about in the non-spoiler segment, because I think, like most people, it was like, oh, Wanda's the bad guy. Okay, she'll be mad and stuff in the beginning, and then some other stuff will happen. Also, I think there was the last TV spot kind of made her officially show that she was like the villain. I didn't watch that. I did as much as I could to. I saw like the teaser and stuff. I think I stopped at like the first official trailer, and then I just didn't watch anything else, because I was like, Spider-Man, it wasn't ruined for me, but let's face it, we all knew what was happening, because the rumors would not stop, and it was just like, I was still just in my head like, I'm just gonna be, maybe it happens. I don't want to look at this where they're like totally this, totally that. I did as much as I could to avoid that. It was almost impossible for Spider-Man, because what they did was like, that was like game changing. So I was like, fortunately it was a bit more toned down for Doctor Strange 2, but I was still like, I just want to avoid as much as I possibly can. I tried to avoid that TV spot, but I saw Captain Carter's butt. I liked it. Should have had more Captain Carter. That's just a me thing. I feel like the internet has really dropped the ball on Captain Carter and how hot she is, and Haley Atwell has always been gorgeous. But yeah, like, what if that first episode I was like, I can climb. I'd be like, I'm 5'11", I'm sure she's taller than that. I don't mind. Crush me, Carter. That's perfect. Not enough Captain Carter. Personal opinion, of course. But I was like, all right, it was official. It was, people talked about it when the poster first came out. I was like, oh, that's like, Captain Carter's shield. And it was like, is she going to be in it? Maybe, maybe not. And then the TV spot officially came out. Like, I saw a meme about it before I even saw the actual promo of the TV spot. And it was like Captain America being like, so, you're looking at my girlfriend's butt. And I was like, dang, that means she's officially in the movie. And I would have loved that to have been a full-on surprise for me. However, Fantastic Four, amazing. I know that everybody always wanted John Krasinski to be him. And to see him actually show up, and like he came in through the portal and everything, like, hey, and I was like, okay, yeah, there's like they did like the full zoom in and everything, like, oh, look at this dude like coming in from an effing portal and all this stuff, because it's him, it's Reed Richards, it makes sense. But I was like, okay, that's pretty sick. Captain Carter was there. That's amazing. I love Haley Atwell. She's awesome. And then honestly, despite everything that happened there, even Professor Xavier, because once again, it was like the first trailer was like, oh snap, is it really going to be Professor X? Most likely, because it's the Illuminati, but it's the multiverse Illuminati. It could be people, I thought it was going to be people from different universes, but I think it was just the Illuminati from that one universe, which is a very interesting concept, and it was much more, I guess, succinct than I was expecting, because I'm like, oh, this is going to be like, he's in like, the space between space, they have that in the movie, but I was like, oh, they're going to be like in a universe between universes, which is a whole thing in comics, and it's going to be, people from like 5 different universes coming to this one point. But then it was like, no, it's just the Illuminati of this world, and that was it, which is what they have in the comics. But I thought, because it's the Multiverse of Madness, I thought each of those characters would be from an alternate universe, but it's not really that. I was thinking Council of Reeds type thing, where they were in like their own universe, pocket, and then those characters would travel there. But it was just that universe they went to, and it was still cool. But even with Professor X coming in and all that stuff, the biggest shock to me was they were like, look, we know you don't care about the Inhumans. We know we don't care about the Inhumans. But what if, for whatever fucking reason, we just decided that show that failed like 7 years ago, I don't even remember when the Inhuman show came out. It was like me and 3.5 other people watched it. But it was like, what if we actually got the actor from the Inhumans TV show and just brought him back for the movie and made him Black Bolt again? And not only did they do that, but they gave him a super badass costume. Like, I think his costume was probably the most accurate in the original, in that series. But they gave him like the full comic outfit and stuff. They had the wings that like zip back in. For anyone who doesn't know Black Bolt, which is everybody, they kind of basically gave you the gist of his character. He's got super strength. They didn't really show that off, but he's got super strength. He can fly, which is why he had like the sort of wingsuit. And of course, if he speaks, he can kill you. And like him showing up was the biggest shock in the world to me. I was like, that's the cameo that I think of the most, because I'm like, love seeing Captain Carter live action. Love that they got the official reveal of, Reed Richards from the Fantastic Four. I actually like the costume. I think it's pretty cool. But Professor X, he came in, we knew he was there, right? Literally didn't think of it until I was in the movies. And I was like, bro, what if he came in with the yellow chair? And he came in with the yellow. And I was like, they did the yellow. And as I was thinking it, they did the X-Men theme. And I was like, na 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 na. And I was like, oh my God, they did the yellow. And they did the X-Men theme. And honestly, I mean, let's face it. If you're a nerd and you're watching that and you grew up on the X-Men, you're just like, fuck, that might be a 10 out of 10 just for that alone. Because it's like, he came in the yellow chair. He did the thing where he was like, he was pointing and stuff. And I was like, that's so crazy. They did the X-Men theme song. It's even in the credits. If you stay for the post-credits sequence, which you should have, it's in there credited, like X-Men 97 theme song. And I was like, dude, it's just there. So that was insane, of course. And he had the whole outfit from the cartoon. It was wild. It was ridiculous that they had that, and it was beautiful. But Black Bolt coming in was honestly the biggest shock to me, probably because, of course, they kind of teased the stuff in the trailer for Professor X. But even Captain Carter, Captain Marvel, of course, being not Monica. Is it Monica? No, I think Monica Rambeau is Spectrum. I can't remember what her mom's name is, but in this universe, she ends up becoming Captain Marvel, so that was pretty cool. And I was like, okay, that's a cool way to get her, because in the MCU, she's dead now. So it was like, this might be the last time we really get to see her unless they do flashbacks of her character. So that kind of, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool that, they got her back for that. Same thing, like I said, the guy who was Black Bolt, I was like, that show's been canceled. But the fact that they even had him in there was another thing where I was like, maybe they'll try again. Maybe they will just be like, hey, what if we just did the movie version of the Inhumans? They probably won't. I know they wanted to before, and then they made it the show, which they should have just made it a movie and just been like, either it lives or it dies as a movie. Because I think they could do some unique stuff with that. And also, him being there. So aside from the fact that was the craziest cameo for me personally, because I was like, why the Inhumans? But it was amazing because I was like, that's such a, that's a reference. And then to cap it off with the fact that they had him do the I'm sorry thing for Doctor Strange, I was like, that's a reference right there. That was like, never in my life, especially after they already had a failed show of it, would I have expected them to be like, like come back, we kind of effed you over with the Inhuman show, dude, but you were pretty cool as Black Bolt. But just come back. We're gonna have you come in, pop in as a cameo. You'll be, part of the Illuminati, which he actually is in the comics. It's Professor X, Doctor Strange, Black Bolt, Namor, who has not shown up, and Black Panther, and I think there might be somebody else in there as well. And sometimes it switches around depending on how things go. Some people might decide to leave the Illuminati, things like that. Classic, any random group in comics is like, somebody might leave, even if it's the super secret group, somebody will leave. Reed Richards, that's what it is. He's also always there. But having Black Bolt come in was just insane to me. I was like, I can't believe they bothered to even do that for the nobody that cares, and nobody who would have ever expected that. But I loved it. I was like, that's crazy. I like the costume even better. And then of course we got to the action sequence, and that was full of this, because he spoke and his brain like exploded and his head like caved in, and I was like, okay, that's not what I was thinking, and that was effed up. And then Reed Richards was like, which they were super confident, right? They like, it was weird because Doctor Strange was like, she's a Scarlet Witch, guys, and they're like, we got Wanda. And then a guy blows his own head up, and then Reed Richards is just like turned into ribbons, and then he's screaming the whole time. By the way, it wasn't he was just like, oh god, like I don't know what's happening. It's like he felt the pain of his body like splitting into little pieces of clay. Like he looked like he was just turning into clay. And I was like, boy oh boy, Guardians of the Galaxy, or like Thanos when he fought against them in Infinity War, it was simple. It was like, oh, he turned him into pieces. That's insane. He left, and it was just like, oh god, that felt so weird. Reed Richards is gone. Like he died, and he was screaming, and then his head just went, and he just died. And I was like, he's gone forever. He is dead. Black Bolt is just like dead on the ground. He's gone forever. And then Captain Carter and Captain Marvel end up fighting her. And then she splits Captain Carter in half. That sucked. It was cool that she had the jetpack. I was like, what is she, a Mandalorian? So that was pretty cool. Came in like the Rocketeer. And then, of course, Captain Marvel, she gets crushed. Technically, I'd say she had it the easiest. I mean, Black Bolt, it was fast. It was shocking, but it was quick. And then Reed had to have had it the worst. I mean, he suffered, it seemed way worse than Captain Carter did. Like, she got split in half and she realized it, and, that sucked, but she died. And then, Captain Marvel got crushed and she tried to block it and she saw it coming. But I was just like, this is crazy. That was definitely, like, the dark part of the movie. I'd say that was the darkest part, but there were some other horror element parts, of course, when Wanda first went to Carmitage and when she was breaking through, like, the reflection in the gong and she's, like, getting cut up as she's breaking out. That was pretty cool. When she was chasing them and her leg wasn't working and she's like all bloodied up and stuff, I was like, that's a pretty good creepy moment. And they had the moment where they were looking at the wall and stuff, or at the door. I guess she walked around because I was waiting for something to happen, and then she just popped up on the screen, like she came out sideways. I was like, I guess she just went around the door. And I thought that was really funny because I'm like, what? I don't know. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, but it was like the scary moment. But I'm like, it doesn't really make sense that it's just like, what's the point of a blast door if you just got another door to go around the corner? Like a blast door is to stop whatever is there. And if you just have a door that goes like to the side and then around the blast door, you don't need a blast door. That doesn't make any sense. But that, it is what it is. So that was an interesting little moment, and her chasing them and stuff, and like kind of blowing through the doors as she was trying to track them down. And it was cool seeing her as like the full on evil Scarlet Witch. It was very interesting, and I'm curious how they're gonna play out her character going forward, because I don't think she's dead. Like they'll probably have her gone for a little while, but her going through this and then destroying the Darkhold and stuff like that, she might. I would like honestly, I would say just keep her calling herself the Scarlet Witch, but she uses that title in the name of good now versus evil, which is basically her actual story in comics, where she, does crazy stuff like wipe out most of the mutants on the planet, things like that. So she could still have that power and call herself the Scarlet Witch, and then it's like, I'm not that version anymore. I'm not the Scarlet Witch that is technically being controlled by the Darkhold. It was, oddly enough, I didn't think of this until like just now. This is probably a better storytelling of the Phoenix storyline than they've ever done in the X-Men movies, because I just thought of that, where it's like, this isn't actually you, it's the Darkhold taking over you. That's the story of the Phoenix, for anyone who doesn't know. It's like, the Phoenix is the evil thing that takes over Jean Grey, or other characters in a lot of the comic stuff that they do. This is probably a better storytelling that they've ever done for the Phoenix, but it's basically this. It's this entity that gives you immense power beyond what you've ever had is technically taking over your body and making you evil. So that, that's kind of the Phoenix storyline. So if you ever wanted a good Phoenix story, I guess this movie technically has it. It even has Professor X trying to stop the Phoenix. So there you go. Also crazy scene, him dying by the like the red smoke coming up, and then it like gets behind him and snaps his neck. I was like, oh, that's nuts. But it was really good. I liked the action that they had there. All the crazy horror segments that they had. Sam Raimi doing his thing. Of course, Bruce Campbell. I didn't mention it. I didn't think about it much before the movie. But there was like 1 second where I was like, Bruce Campbell's gonna be in the movie. Like it dawned on me for like half a second. I was like, I'm gonna see Bruce Campbell again. That's nice. Very good. Also, Evil Dead the game is coming out next week, Friday the 13th. Obviously not sponsored. I don't make money like that. But just saying, if you like Evil Dead the game is coming out. You can check out all the preview videos. I'm excited. So it was cool to see Bruce Campbell come in. Maybe he said he wouldn't play Ash anymore, so I guess not. But they could still do Army of Darkness versus Marvel Zombies. They could do it in What If. I want them to do What If, and it's just like, just give me Army of Darkness versus Marvel Zombies in a What If story. I'll be happy. That's all I really need. But it was cool to see him. I like seeing the like 2 other alternate universes that we really got, because we got like the Destroyed Universe and then the Green Universe. And technically, in the very beginning, they were in like the dimension between dimensions where they were going for the book, the good book, I'm gonna call it, because I don't remember the name. And where the first Doctor Strange dies. But I thought it was cool. I like that, them going through all the different multiverses. We got to see Spider-Man Noir, like the Noir verse, which is pretty cool. And there was other stuff. Obviously, the paint one was like, were we paint in that one universe? I thought that was funny. I was like, yeah, it's hard to eat there. But I like how they did that. And, I'll watch some YouTube videos to see, some of the other ones that they go through. Because it seems like they could pick up on some of those. They probably won't do Spider-Man Noir live action. But it would be cool if they did. I think it would be cool if they did. But I watched a YouTube video to see like exactly what other universes they went through. They also call the movie universe 616, which I hate because the comic universe is 616, and they've done this before where they had Mysterio say that, and then it turned out obviously he was lying about the multiverse. But I don't know why they wouldn't just designate an alternate number. Like just give it a different number. Like call it 617. Like just do whatever you want. Just don't call it the 616 because that's literally the comic universe. Like and the only reason that that's even a big deal is not like, oh, the comic universe is 616. How can they make the movie universe? It's the fact that they've literally like crossed over some stuff from the movie universe into like the comic universe from time to time. And they have stuff like the Spider-Man video game has crossed over, the PS4 one has crossed over with the comics. So it's not like these universes for like the movies and the games and the shows and then the comics are all separate. They've had crossover with different stuff here and there. So it's like, I don't know why they just don't give it a different number and just be like, this is that universe, because no one's going to care except the nerds that care. It's like, we already know what the comics are is 616. Just call it something else. So I feel like they should call it 1611 because the movie universe is more akin to the Ultimate Comics than it is the original Marvel Comics. At least a lot of the stuff that they do is very akin to like Ultimates more than it is original. So they should call it like the 1611 universe. That would have been really cool. But anyway, random super nerd moment. Still loved it. Really glad that they went through the process of being like, hey, here's different universes. Here's what happens when these characters die in this universe, especially if it's gruesome, because we don't really get that much. And here's what happens when we just tell Sam Raimi, PG-13, please. And Sam Raimi's like, I've done that before. I've seen Drag Me to Hell. Like, his PG-13 is basically just R, but it's like, well, technically that's just oil from those robots and not the blood of the man that she, like, split into ribbons and popped his head off, or the guy who blew up his own brain from the inside. You're good. But definitely, like, this movie for sure is, like, right, like, if there's ever anything between PG-13 and R, it's this movie right here. It's this, and pretty much anything else Sam Raimi has done that's PG-13. It's all his movies have, like, a in-between ranking of, like, PG-13, Sam Raimi rating, and then R. Like, that's his stuff. But I loved it. I thought it was really fun. Like, the gruesome stuff was just, like, especially when you don't expect it to go that crazy, because it takes a minute to get to that point. Like, they did, like, the stuff where she chases them, which, actually, I guess that was after, so up to this point, it was like she got into a dude's head and she crawled out from a thing and it was cut up and distorted. And it was like, okay, that's still kind of minor. She grabbed some people from a puddle. Creepy, but it's like, okay. A dude blowing his own head up from the inside is very different. Like, it wasn't like he just died. It was like you saw, like, the explosion and it went like, and his head, like, melted inward. And I was like, that's super gross. And then he dropped dead. And then she, like, tore a dude apart into, like, little spindles of ribbon. And his head popped. And he screamed. He screamed as he died. So yeah, they went dark with it, but I enjoyed it. I liked the way that they did America's Powers, like her punching through the universes and stuff. I like the star. I've seen reviews where people mention they wish it wasn't like exactly a star and stuff. I thought it was cool. I was like, I actually kind of like that visual of it, especially because every time they did it, it wasn't like she was, until like maybe the halfway point or something. Every time she did it, it was always like a bunch of universes being opened up. And I actually love that element where when she couldn't control it, it was like she just opened up pockets within pockets. And you could see the layers where it was like, here's this universe, but then you could see that there was a separate star and you could see it kind of go down this line. And I was like, that's actually super cool. Like when she can't control it, or, in the future, if they decide to go with it, she could control it and like pop open portals within portals to, here's a universe here. And then you can walk through even further to go to that one. But when they first did it, it would just be like this concave set of stars opening up different universes. And I was like, I kind of like that image of when she can't control it, it just goes on to whatever universe. So I thought that was cool. Her gaining control of her powers as the movie went on, I feel like could have used a little bit more. And this is where I think the main crux of the film comes from, is that they spent time on stuff that just didn't matter to me. And I felt like it could have been used to further the more immediate plot versus stuff that will most likely come up later. Like, the stuff with her parents was definitely important to be like, this is how I first activated my powers and I lost my parents. I sent them out into the multiverse and who knows, they could be dead. They'll probably do a whole thing. She definitely finds them later. Just because that would be nice. But I felt like they spent so much time on that they didn't bother being like, hey, how about the resolution of her actually controlling her powers beyond just Doctor Strange believing in her. Like, I technically it was him learning a lesson where it was like his whole thing was he's not happy. He couldn't be with the woman that he loved because he always had to be in control. Even after he learned how to humble himself, but he in this movie he had to learn how to actually stop being in control. Like, he learned from the first movie how to not just be a complete twat, and in this movie he learned, like, even if you're the good person, you can do it in the wrong way. And I think that was kind of the big story for his character. Like, he had the Doctor Strange in the Illuminati verse. I don't know why I called it that, but that's what we're going with. He did a good thing. He helped them defeat Thanos, but it was like the Darkhold will make you evil. And, like, even in that moment, he wasn't evil yet. He was just like, I know I can become evil, and that's too much of a risk. Epic cameo, or reference, I should say, with Black Bolt saying, I'm sorry, and he kills him. A great moment. So it was like, all right, that was his lesson, but I felt like America needed more than that, just to be like, you know, I believe in you. I'm not going to kill you and take your power so that I can control it just so she can't have it. You can do it. And I was like, I felt like she needed more. I felt like she needed to have more moments, but really any moment, I think, by herself where she just straight up did it. Like, even if it was like she almost did it. Like, they kind of hint. I think the best hint they had was when she did break from the glass, because she punched it and she used her powers to kind of like crack the glass, and then eventually she breaks out. And I'm like, I feel like she needed at least one other moment of that, just to be like, okay, she's gaining control of her power, and now in this final moment, she needs to harness that fear. Instead of it just blowing a portal open, she needs to just harness it and, you know, kind of open up a portal, which is what she did at the end. But I felt like they literally went from like step 1 to step 3, and they missed step 2. Like, she just needed one extra moment to show that she's realizing that, you know, at least in the middle somewhere, where she's like, oh crap, some part of me can actually control this. I can figure this out, but I probably can't do it in like this crazy situation. And then Doctor Strange comes in after he realizes his problems. He figures out his lesson for the movie. Then he tells her, like, you can't do it even if it's in the hardest moment. And that's kind of what you need to channel. Is like, that's her whole thing. Is like, I can only activate my powers in you know, in times of stress. And then after he learns his lesson, he basically tells her the same thing. And then she's like, oh, I can still do it even if I'm scared. Boom, they both get their lesson. I feel like she needed one extra moment, and they spent a little too much time on, like, the backstory of her stuff with, like, getting, you know, losing her parents, and too much time on her being upset about not controlling it, and they didn't really build up to her being able to do it. And they probably could have cut out some of the time of, honestly, a little, like, a tiny chunk of the Illuminati stuff, but it was technically for Doctor Strange's story. Him being in the cage and talking to Christine and stuff like that, and how pretty much every universe is the same thing. Like, yeah, we just never seem to really figure that one out. But I feel like that was like the one real thing that was missing, is for her character to have a more complete story. I know she's not the main character, but she did have the ultimate resolution. He didn't solve the problem because his problem was solved. And so she needed to do something, and she does, like I said. But I felt like she needed another moment to kind of build up to that, because it did seem like she just got captured, and then she, boom, problem solved. Like, hey, I'm not going to take your powers. You got it. And she's like, I do got it. And then it was over. And I was like, oh, okay. I wish she had another moment in the middle. Like, you always have that first step, like, oh. And then you have the second step where they become more confident. And then you have the moment where, you know, they're on that rise, and then they get taken down because she was literally captured. So then it's like, I can't do anything. And then she picks right back up and has the epic hero moment at the end. But they just had like the curiosity and then success right I mean, technically she got captured, but it was just like that one spark of curiosity, and then it just dipped way down and then came right back up. So it didn't like rise and fall. It kind of was just like, here's the start, and then it drops, and then it ends. So it kind of just came out like slightly above where it started, because technically she won, but it was like, I didn't see anything, you know, there wasn't much of an arc, because once again, it wasn't her movie. But considering she did like the final blow to win, they should have put more effort into that, I personally feel. But didn't destroy the movie. Just like a minor thing where I was like, I feel like she didn't have as much of an arc as she should have, considering she's the catalyst for everything that actually ends up happening. Like, she does deserve her own arc. And I felt like they kind of skimped on that. And they probably could have used less time. Like the scene where they talk about her parents, they probably could have cut that out. She could have just said it instead of them showing it. And then you just go through her building up her powers instead. But they spent like a decent chunk of time on that sequence. But then they don't actually give her another sequence, like, at all in the movie, until she's captured and then she saves herself. And that's like, honestly, it's like that moment was her biggest moment in the whole movie. And then she got, you know, captured, and then it was the end of the movie. And I was like, she needed another big moment for her character. And I felt like there's like little bits and pieces that they could have cut out to add time, or just do an extra scene. Like, honestly, I felt like the movie could have been like a little bit longer just for her. And I think it would have helped out a little bit. I think that's pretty much everything. I know there's some stuff I skipped. I do wish Mordo was actually the Mordo from Doctor Strange 1, like from the main universe. That annoyed me. I'll be honest, I was kind of upset about that it was just a different guy. Because I'm like, the story would have been way cooler if that version of Mordo ended up traveling the multiverse and became a part of the Illuminati in a different universe. That would have been way cooler. And then he kind of learns like this balance of things where it's like, okay, I've been to multiple universes now, and it's always you. You were always the problem, and I was right to like kind of stomp out magic, but you're the biggest threat of magic. You know, like his whole thing is to wipe out magic, period. But for him to have the concept of like, I have to start at Doctor Strange and kind of work my way down makes a lot of sense, especially if he's doing it through the multiverse. He takes out the guy at the very top, and then he can work his way out, you know, from there. And so it kind of sucked. It was just like, oh, he's just a different dude. And he may have been bad. Like, you know, Doctor Strange was effing with him. Was like, you know, I bet you were happy that he died and all this stuff. And it's like, that probably wasn't him. Because even after they had the fight, he was like, you know, I'm starting to see why your Mordo doesn't like you. And it's like, so I guess he was actually an okay guy. He just was upset about the whole Doctor Strange thing. Maybe there was a little bit of truth to that. Him not liking Doctor Strange. But it was mostly just like, oh, okay, he's actually still just a good guy. It's not our Mordo. I guess we'll wait and see what happens. Are they ever going to bring him back? Because now at the end of the, you know, we got a mid-credit sequence, and this woman rips a portal. You know, Charlize Theron comes out. I didn't know that. And she comes out. I was like, oh, okay. Okay. She rips a portal open. Incursions are happening. You want to roll? And then his third eye opens up. And he's like, let's do it. And then it ends. And I'm like, he does not have time for Mordo. like magic, like that's nothing anymore. We got a dimension coming down on another dimension. We don't have time for Mordo. So I don't know when they're ever bringing that dude back to just be the villain character. But I kind of want to see that. Hopefully the third movie, you know, if they do incursions, I feel like that's much bigger than just Doctor Strange 3, the incursion. It'll be a better title. But hopefully that's just like an Avengers level thing. And, you know, obviously he's in it like he has been before. And that's just a bunch of people fighting the incursion. And then when he has his third movie eventually, it's just our universe or their universe. And then Mordo comes in, and that's it. It's him versus another magic user that wants to siphon the magic from everyone on Earth and just get rid of magic. Maybe that'll happen. Maybe it won't. But as of now, Doctor Strange is just doing like buck wild stuff. Like ever since his first movie, nothing he's done has just been like, I'm doing this thing because I'm a hero. He's fighting everything and everywhere, and it's crazy. So we'll see if he ever ends up just back on Earth. It's just his Earth, and that's it. We'll see. But as of now, I'm excited for what they're going to end up doing with Doctor Strange 3. We'll see what happens with him, you know, having the third eye and everything. We'll see what happens when he eventually does become Sorcerer Supreme. They tease it a bunch because I'm like, you know, people said it all the whole way leading up to this movie. Wong has to die for him to be Sorcerer Supreme again because he got blipped. So, you know, Wong has to die for another person to take over. They didn't do it this movie. I'm glad they didn't. But I don't know. I mean, he could give it up too. They could easily write it in and just be like, yeah, I'm giving it up. I don't know why Wong would ever do that. He's like the most, at least as far as, you know, the movies go, it's like, this is the guy who does it. Like, he's the guy who's like, magic, rules, bow to me. You know, he's the guy who knows it and loves it, and he wants to be the Sorcerer Supreme. So he would have to die. I don't think he would ever give it up. So something crazy would have to happen. Maybe Mordo could take his magic like he did at the end of the post-credit sequence. He could just take his magic from him. And he doesn't die, but he can't be Sorcerer Supreme if he doesn't have magic. So they could do it that way. And we'll just see what happens. But that's probably a long time coming, considering how long it took to get an official second movie just for Doctor Strange. And even this movie was like partly Wanda's story, partly America's story. So it's probably going to take a minute before he just has his own movie again, where it's mostly just him and what he has to deal with. But I still enjoyed it. I wish we got to see more multiverses. I wish we got way more Captain Carter. Just 100% more of her. 300%. All Captain Carter all the time. I'm good for that. But I enjoyed the movie. I'm definitely excited to see what they do next. I also like the piano fight. The music fight, I thought was great. Super silly and cheesy, but I was like, I'm loving this. Like when he first did it and stuff, I was like, okay, it's starting off, it's silly. And then I was like, nope. I love this because this is the type of thing that I feel Doctor Strange would do. Especially the evil version does like the classic dun 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 dun. And I was like, this is so dumb, it's perfect. And I absolutely loved it. And then he got that one chord because they both understood exactly what was happening, and he brought one extra piece in to just throw it all off. And I was like, that's actually really cool. Like, he looked at a different instrument. I was like, it was actually like really, really good. Once it was all said and done, I was like, I actually love that. That's honestly like one of my favorite parts of the movie. And I was like, yeah, I enjoyed that. I could see why people would find it too cheesy, but I was like, no, this is actually amazing. I love that part. But all in all, definitely entertaining. I wish we got more multiverses. Would have loved to have seen the cameo characters not get obliterated, but it was also really cool to see, and it was effed up and dark. But I would have liked to have seen them more. Not just Captain Carter. I would have liked to have seen all the characters a lot more. I mean, they made me care about Black Bolt again. That's crazy. That's evident. That's nearly impossible. So I don't know. I kind of made me be like, oh, if someone, a lot like the Fantastic Four, like if someone can do it right, the Inhumans could be pretty sick. Black Bolt himself is actually a really cool character. It's just you have to do like the whole family story and make it work. So I don't know. I was kind of just like, dang. I mean, I know that guy is technically, I think in one of the new Star Trek shows, so he might be too busy to actually do another movie. But I was just like, well, I don't know. They made me kind of be like, there's hope. There's hope out there. But cameos were great. We got the yellow chair. We got the X-Men theme song. We got Reed Richards. We got Captain Carter again, especially as the Rocketeer. Also awesome. Would have loved it if she actually had the sword from the What If series as well, because she walks around with the sword a lot too. And that, well, I guess not really. She technically had a sword, but I don't think they even really had her use it that much at the end of that series either. So that's unfortunate. But that was like her thing in the first episode, at least. She ends up getting a sword, so she has a sword and a shield. So I would have loved to have seen that more, but in general, like the way they handled things was just dark and amazing combat-wise. And I'm excited to see what they do next. Wanda has disappeared. You know, she's died, but you know, she's disappeared. She's destroyed the Darkhold across the multiverse. And we'll just see what happens next with her character. They'll probably take her out for a little while, and then she'll come back and be like, it took me some time to like officially get over everything that's happened. White Vision didn't show up. I will say that was like the one thing I thought for sure was going to be like the random cameo, like surprise, White Vision is here, because they had that whole moment. Even in WandaVision, it was dumb because it was like they had that whole moment where they talk, and he was like, I gotta think. And he left the series at the end, and I was like, that's weird that they did that way. And I always thought that was kind of dumb. And then he doesn't show up here either. And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. I thought somehow that, like, how can you not have that there? And they don't. Because, of course, her going through the multiverse was like, you know, you never see Vision. But it was like, oh, they just didn't get Paul Bettany. It was a classic thing where I was like, we're not going to see him. But I was like, but they might do it where they, you know, surprise us at the end. And, you know, because they could have kept him out of it as far as like her jumping through dimensions and then surprise us at the end. Like, no, he's in the movie, but they just didn't want to spoil it because you would, if you saw Paul Bettany, you'd be like, oh, he's definitely going to play White Vision. So it was easy to be like, maybe they're hiding him just for that sake. And then it's like, no, they just didn't do it. And I was like, that seems so weird, because I'm like, how do you not have the other half of what she lost? You know, like, she lost her kids, but she lost the man she loved as well. And not only did she lose him, she had to kill the guy. Time got rewound, then she saw him die, then she made a fake version of him, and that guy died, and then a white version of him exists, and then he left. She lost that dude like 4.5 times. It's insane. How could they not put him in this movie and have that be a part of her resolution? I thought that was crazy, because I'm like, that's a weird thing to not bring in, because no, like, what else is he gonna do? Like, it's White Vision. Nobody else cares. So it's weird. It was super weird that they didn't think, we gotta bring in Vision. We gotta bring in White Vision. So that, I think, was like honestly the biggest like story element piece that was truly missing, where I was like, that just seemed to make the most sense to me personally. Like, how do you not have him there? Like I said, even as a surprise, you don't show him, and it's like, it's weird that they don't show him. Like, she doesn't want him there, and it was like, oh, it's just a trick to be like, you know, to make you think he wasn't in the movie, and then it's like, boom, White Vision shows up at the end, and then boom, he doesn't, and it just wasn't there. Maybe they thought it would have been too much to add him in at the last minute, but as the antagonist, who is technically a hero, you know, being controlled by something dark and evil, it would have totally fit. You know, maybe, you know, make the movie even longer, but I wouldn't mind it if the story actually was nice. Who cares? It's like, you feel good. It doesn't, you know, mess up anything. But the movie is what it is now, and I still enjoyed it. But there's definitely some elements where I'm like, I wish this was longer, wish this was expanded, wish this character just was in the movie. But I don't hate it. I definitely don't hate it. I don't see how anyone could hate this movie. But I don't think it's like, holy crap, I gotta see it a second time. But I do feel like I'd enjoy it a second time. If I saw it again, I might actually enjoy it more the second time, knowing exactly how the story plays out. You can just kind of enjoy things and recognize more of the crazy stuff that they do. Bruce Campbell is epic, hilarious. You know, post-credit sequence, just him just looking right at the camera. They have like 3 or 4 scenes in this movie where someone looks right at the camera, by the way. And I was like, oh, that's interesting way to do that. But thought it was good. Really enjoyed it. Would love to know your thoughts. Was hoping to make this succinct, but there is a lot to talk about with this one. So sorry that I rambled, as I always do. But if you guys have any comments, please put them down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.